The alien queen warned me, yet desire drew us together. The crystalline spires of Nexara's capital gleamed like frozen flames against the violet sky as Elian Tavros's shuttle made its final descent. His heart raced not from the turbulence but from the weight of his mission. As Earth's foremost xenodiplomat, he had negotiated with a dozen alien species. But the Nexarans remained a mystery even after years of distant communication. Remember, Ambassador Tavros, his AI assistant chirped, Nexaran culture values composure above all. Their empress has agreed to these talks against significant opposition. Elian nodded, adjusting the collar of his midnight blue diplomatic uniform. And yet they've never explained why they're willing to talk now. After decades of isolation, the shuttle doors hissed open to reveal a reception of tall, slender figures with silvery scaled skin that caught the light like polished metal. Their eyes, large and vertically pupilled, regarded him with undisguised curiosity. "Welcome to Nexara, Ambassador," spoke the tallest among them, her voice melodic yet authoritative. "I am Sentinel Mavis, personal guard to Her Luminescence Empress Lyria Nox. She awaits you in the Crystal Court." The journey through the capital city revealed a civilization of elegant precision. Everything, from the flowing architecture to the movement of its people, seemed to follow patterns Elian couldn't quite grasp, like a complex dance he was witnessing for the first time. When the Crystal Court's massive doors parted, Elian's diplomatic composure faltered. Seated upon a throne that seemed carved from a single diamond was the most striking being he had ever encountered. Empress Lyria Nox's scales shimmered with an iridescence that shifted between silver and pale blue. Her eyes were luminous pools of amber that seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Ambassador Tavros," she acknowledged, her voice resonating through the chamber. "You have traveled far to reach us." Elian bowed precisely as protocol dictated. "The distance is nothing compared to the opportunity, Your Luminescence. Earth has long hoped for this day, has it?" A subtle shift in her expression. Was that amusement? "I wonder what stories you tell of us on your world." "Respectful ones, though admittedly limited by our ignorance." Elian straightened, meeting her gaze directly. A calculated risk. "We hope to replace speculation with understanding." Something flickered in her eyes. A noble sentiment. Yet understanding often complicates rather than simplifies relations between worlds. The formal reception continued. But Elian couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the ritualized exchanges, the Empress was assessing him personally, not just as Earth's representative. When their hands briefly touched during the ceremonial sharing of water, he felt a strange resonance like distant thunder. Later, in his appointed quarters, Elian reviewed the day's events. "She's agreed to private talks tomorrow," he told his AI, "without advisors." "Unprecedented," the AI responded, "and potentially concerning." Elian moved to the window, gazing at Nexara's 3 moons. "She's not what I expected." The Nexaran Empress is known to be calculating and coolly logical. Their species evolved in crystal caverns where emotional display was considered wasteful. "There's more to her than that," Elian murmured, recalling how her eyes had lingered on his when she thought no one was watching. "She's curious about us. About me." As sleep eluded him that night, Elian couldn't stop thinking about tomorrow's private audience. He had come to Nexara prepared to negotiate resources, technology, and defense, not to feel this unexpected pull toward its enigmatic ruler. Something told him that whatever happened in the coming days would change him irrevocably. And somewhere in the heart of the Crystal Palace, Empress Lyria Nox stood alone on her private balcony, contemplating the stars, and the curious human who had disrupted her carefully ordered thoughts. The private negotiation chamber was intimate by Nexaran standards, a hexagonal room with walls of smoky quartz that shifted from opaque to translucent with the changing light. Elian arrived precisely on time to find Empress Lyria already waiting, her formal regalia replaced by simpler attire that somehow made her seem more, rather than less, regal. "Ambassador," she greeted him, gesturing to the low table between them. "I thought we might dispense with some formalities." "I'd be honored, Your Luminescence." Elian took his seat, noticing the absence of recording devices or attendants. "Though I admit this is unexpected." "Is it?" Lyria's head tilted slightly, her amber eyes studying him. "Your reputation suggests you prefer directness." "As do I when circumstances permit." Their discussion began with trade proposals, resources Earth needed, technology Nexara might share, but gradually shifted toward deeper questions of governance and culture. Elian found himself captivated not just by what she said, but how she thought, the elegant precision of her mind. Your democratic system seems chaotic, Lyria observed. How do you maintain consistency across generations? We don't necessarily, Elian smiled. We value adaptation over consistency. It's messy but resilient. Like your oceans, she replied unexpectedly. Always changing yet somehow eternal. Elian blinked in surprise. You've studied Earth's geography? A flicker of something embarrassment crossed her features. I study what interests me, Ambassador. Their meetings continued daily, each session stretching longer than protocol suggested. They moved from formal negotiations to philosophical exchanges that left both questioning long-held assumptions. On the 7th day, they walked through the Royal Botanical Gardens, where plants from 100 worlds grew in harmonious arrangement. My ancestors believed isolation was safety, Lyria said softly as they paused beneath trees with luminous blue leaves. That contact with other species would dilute what makes us Nexaran. And what do you believe? Elian asked, acutely aware of their isolation among the winding paths. She turned to him close enough that he could see the delicate patterns in her scales. That stagnation is a slower death than change. Her voice lowered. Your presence here has confirmed this. Their eyes held for a heartbeat too long before she stepped back. But court politics are complex. There are factions opposed to any human alliance. There are similar voices on Earth, Elian admitted. Fear of the unknown is universal. Is that what you felt when you first saw me? Her question was barely audible. No, he answered honestly. Not fear. The silence between them hummed with unspoken implications. That evening, a diplomatic reception brought together Nexaran nobility and Earth's small delegation. Elian navigated the complex social currents, aware of the calculating gazes following him, and the whispers about his daily private meetings with the Empress. The Kaldorian ambassador seeks an audience, his assistant informed him discreetly. He implies his empire offers advantages we cannot match. Across the gleaming hall, Elian caught Lyria's gaze. Though surrounded by courtiers, she seemed isolated in her authority. When she subtly gestured toward a side balcony, he found himself moving in that direction without conscious decision. Ambassador Tavros, she greeted him formally when he joined her under the stars. Are you finding the reception educational? Illuminating, he replied, noting how different she seemed in public, her posture stiffer, her expression guarded. Though I prefer our private discussions. As do I. Her voice softened, almost vulnerable. They are becoming necessary to me. Before he could respond, her sentinel approached, bowing deeply. Your luminescence, the Kaldorian delegation requests your presence. Lyria's expression closed like a shuttered window. Duty calls, Ambassador. She turned to leave, but paused. Meet me in the Crystal Garden at midnight. There are things you must know about the true reason I requested Earth's envoy. Hours later, Elian slipped through the shadowed palace corridors, questions tumbling through his mind. The Crystal Garden was heart-stoppingly beautiful at night, its formations glowing with soft internal light. Lyria waited beside a pool of silver water, her official robes replaced by a simple garment that shimmered with her movements. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice. I wasn't certain you would. I think we're past diplomatic obligations, Elian replied, stepping closer.
Why am I really here, Lyria?
The use of her name without title hung between them, a boundary crossed. But she didn't correct him. Because I had a vision, she whispered, of our worlds entwined in ways my advisors would never understand. And of you, though I didn't know your face until you arrived. Under the light of 3 moons, the truth emerged between them like the crystal formations growing all around, beautiful, inevitable, and utterly transformative. The crisis erupted without warning, a mysterious illness sweeping through Nexara's southern province, affecting both Nexarans and the few humans stationed there. Emergency protocols isolated the region, but panic threatened the delicate diplomatic balance Elian and Lyria had cultivated. Our medical technology is more advanced in viral pathology, Elian argued in the emergency council session. Let our doctors work with yours. Elder Thaxon, leader of the traditionalist faction, rose in opposition. This outbreak began after human arrival. How convenient that you now offer help for a problem you may have caused. The chamber erupted in angry murmurs until Lyria stood, her authority silencing all dissent. Enough. I will personally oversee a joint medical team. Ambassador Tavros will coordinate with me directly. The decision sent shockwaves through the court, but none dared challenge her openly. As the chamber emptied, Thaxon approached Elian with cold eyes. She favors you, human. But remember, empresses have been deposed for less. Over the following days, Elian and Lyria worked tirelessly, their professional collaboration masking the growing personal connection neither could deny. Late one night, analyzing data in her private study, the barriers between them finally began to crumble. It's a synthetic pathogen, Lyria said, looking up from microscopic images. Deliberately released. Elian moved to her side, their shoulders touching as they examined the evidence. Who would benefit from derailing our alliance? The list is long. Fatigue shadowed her luminous eyes. I've made enemies by challenging our isolation. Without thinking, Elian reached out, his fingers gently touching her hand. Instead of withdrawing, her fingers intertwined with his. The first deliberate contact they'd shared outside of formal ceremony. This changes everything, she whispered, not referring to the pathogen. It changes nothing, he responded, holding her gaze. It only reveals what was already true. The bioluminescent garden became their sanctuary in the following weeks. While their days were consumed with containing the outbreak and identifying its source, their nights belonged to conversations that grew increasingly intimate. Beneath the canopy of glowing flora, they shared childhood memories, personal philosophies, and gradually, hesitant touches that sent shivers through both of them. Your species believes in love, Lyria said one night, resting her head against his shoulder as they sat hidden among towering crystal formations. Mine speaks only of compatible genetics and advantageous unions. And what do you believe? Elian asked, his fingers tracing the delicate patterns of her scales, marveling at how his touch made them shimmer with increased luminescence. I believe the universe is more complex than either of our cultures admits. She turned to face him, her expression vulnerable in a way she never showed to others, and that finding someone who understands your soul transcends biology. Their first kiss was tentative, a crossing of boundaries both physical and diplomatic. Her lips were cooler than human temperature, with a faint sweetness he hadn't expected. When they parted, the bioluminescent plants around them had brightened dramatically, responding to their elevated heart rates. The gardens are sensitive to emotion, Lyria explained, a rare blush coloring her silvery cheeks. We're quite exposed here, Elian laughed softly.
Is that your way of suggesting we find somewhere more private?
Their shared laughter, her first in his presence, felt as intimate as any touch. But as they moved deeper into the garden, neither noticed the shadow that detached itself from behind a crystal formation, nor the recording device it carried. In her private chambers, a sanctuary no foreigner had ever entered, they discovered each other with wonder and tender hesitation. The differences in their physiology became points of fascination rather than division. Her scaled skin was surprisingly soft beneath his fingertips, responding to his touch with subtle patterns of light that followed his caress. His warmth seemed to entrance her, her hands exploring the unfamiliar texture of his skin with reverent curiosity. This is treason, by ancient law, she whispered against his neck, voice trembling not with fear but with the intensity of emotion. To share myself with an outsider. Then we're both traitors, he replied, cupping her face gently. To put what's between us above our separate worlds. Their union transcended physical pleasure, creating a connection that felt like coming home to a place neither had known existed. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the soft light of dawn, reality began seeping back into their sanctuary. The pathogen was Keldorian, Elian said quietly, stroking her silvery hair. They wanted to sabotage Earth-Nexara relations. Elder Thaxon has been meeting with their ambassador. Lyria traced abstract patterns on his chest. If he discovers us, a soft chime interrupted. The palace alert system. Lyria rose instantly, her royal composure settling over her like armor. Emergency council session, she said, reading the notification. The Keldorian delegation demands an immediate audience. As they hastily dressed, a sense of foreboding settled between them. Their separate duties, momentarily forgotten in the night's intimacy, now loomed like an approaching storm. "Whatever happens," Elian said, catching her hand before she could leave, "remember that what we've found is real. Not diplomacy, not strategy, truth." Her amber eyes held his with fierce intensity. "Some truths are powerful enough to reshape worlds. Elian, I only hope ours is strong enough for what's coming." Neither could have known that at that very moment, Elder Thaxon was presenting evidence of their forbidden relationship to the Council of Ancients, the one body with power to challenge even the Empress herself. The council chamber vibrated with tension as Elian entered, immediately sensing something had changed. The Nexaran elders sat in rigid formation, their expressions closed and cold. At the center, Empress Lyria sat upon her crystal throne, her posture perfect and utterly formal. Gone was any trace of the woman who had trembled in his arms hours before. "Ambassador Tavros," Elder Thaxon's voice cut through the silence. "How fortunate you could join us for this historic moment." Elian maintained his diplomatic composure, though unease prickled along his spine. "I serve at the pleasure of her luminescence and the council." "Indeed." Thaxon's vertical pupils narrowed. "Then you will be pleased to witness the signing of the Nexaran-Keldorian Treaty of Perpetual Alliance." The announcement struck Elian like a physical blow. He looked to Lyria, whose face remained impassive, though he caught the almost imperceptible tightening of her fingers on the throne's armrests. "This is unexpected," Elian managed, his mind racing. "Earth's proposal has been considered and rejected," Thaxon interrupted. "The Council has determined that Keldorian interests align more naturally with Nexaran prosperity." The Keldorian ambassador stepped forward, a massive, ridge-backed creature whose predatory smile revealed too many teeth. "We offer exclusive mining rights to our quantum fields in exchange for Nexaran defensive technology." A perfect symmetry. Elian knew the real story. Keldorians had depleted their own worlds through aggressive mining, leaving environmental devastation in their wake. This wasn't alliance but exploitation, wrapped in diplomatic language. "Your luminescence," Elian addressed Lyria directly. "Protocol be damned. May I request a private audience before any binding agreements are finalized?" The chamber went deathly quiet. For a heartbeat, Lyria's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of the connection they shared. "That would be inappropriate," Elder Thaxon interjected. "The Empress has been fully briefed on certain concerns regarding your interactions. The Council has unanimously recommended distance between Nexara's sovereign and Earth's representative." The implication hung heavy in the air. They knew. Somehow they knew. Lyria finally spoke, her voice cool and distant. "The Council's wisdom guides us all, Ambassador. The alliance with Keldor has been decided." She wouldn't meet his eyes. 3 days later, Elian supervised the evacuation of Earth's diplomatic compound. His requests for audience with the Empress had been denied repeatedly. The few Nexarans who still spoke with him whispered of palace upheaval, of Thaxon's faction gaining power, of evidence presented condemning the Empress's contamination by human contact. "The shuttle departs in 2 hours. Ambassador," his AI assistant reminded him, "all personnel are accounted for except yourself." Elian stared out at the crystalline city that had briefly felt like it could become a second home. "Has there been any response to our final communication?" "Negative. The palace has gone silent." He had sent one last encrypted message to Lyria's personal channel. "I understand duty. I respect your choice. But know that what we discovered together was real, a bridge between worlds that others are too afraid to imagine. I carry it with me always." No response had come. As twilight descended, turning the crystal spires to flame, a soft chime announced an unexpected visitor. Sentinel Mavis, Lyria's personal guard, stood at his threshold, her expression unreadable. "The Empress sends a formal farewell gift," she announced loudly, for the benefit of any listeners before pressing a small crystal into his palm. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "In privacy. Quickly." Once alone, Elian activated the crystal. Lyria's holographic form appeared, her eyes holding the emotion her face in the council chamber had concealed. "My beloved," her recorded message began, "what you witnessed was necessary deception. Thaxon discovered us and threatened exposure unless I submitted to the Council's demands. I am now effectively a prisoner in my own palace, she continued urgently. The Keldorians plan betrayal. They seek not alliance but conquest, using our technology against both our worlds. I cannot openly oppose them without civil war, but neither can I allow this corruption of everything I've worked for. Her image flickered. Return to Earth, warn your people. When the moment comes, and it will, remember what we created between us. Not just love, but possibility. The proof that different worlds can find harmony. The message ended with her pressing her hand to her heart, a Nexaran gesture of deepest loyalty. Elian stood motionless, the crystal warm in his palm. Then he contacted his assistant. Delay the evacuation. I need to speak with Earth Command immediately. Protocol requires complete withdrawal as ordered. The AI responded. Protocol be damned, Elian said, already composing the emergency transmission. 2 worlds are at stake. That night, as Earth's shuttle lifted from Nexaran soil, Elian watched the receding crystal cities with a heart both broken and resolute. In his secure compartment, he began drafting plans that would either save 2 worlds or end his career, possibly both. On her palace balcony, Empress Lyria tracked the shuttle's ascent until it vanished among the stars, her face finally free to show the grief she had concealed from her captors. Around her finger, she wore a simple band woven from materials of both their worlds, a promise she intended to keep, no matter the cost. Part 5. Stellar Convergence. 3 months after Earth's diplomatic withdrawal from Nexara, the Keldorian betrayal came swiftly and brutally. Their warships, enhanced with stolen Nexaran technology, simultaneously blockaded both Earth and Nexara. The message was clear: surrender resources or face orbital bombardment. On Earth, the Defense Council gathered in emergency session, faces grim as tactical displays showed the overwhelming Keldorian force. We can't match their firepower, General Santos stated flatly, not with Nexaran shield technology integrated into their fleet. We don't need to match it, Elian countered, stepping forward. Though no longer official ambassador, his expertise had kept him involved. We need to nullify it. He revealed what he'd been developing since his return, a countermeasure based on his intimate knowledge of Nexaran crystal technology, designed to create a feedback loop in the stolen systems. This could work, the chief scientist acknowledged, reviewing the schematics. But deployment would require direct access to their command ship. Impossible under blockade. Not impossible, Elian said quietly. I still have contacts on Nexara. The mission was unauthorized, unsanctioned, and likely suicidal. A stealth shuttle carrying Elian and a small team slipped through the Keldorian blockade, using experimental cloaking technology. Their destination, not the Nexaran capital, but the remote crystal forests where loyal elements of Lyria's personal guard awaited. Sentinel Mavis greeted them with grim efficiency. The Empress has been declared unfit to rule and is under house arrest. Elder Thaxon rules as regent, though many suspect he's merely a Keldorian puppet now. Can you get us into the palace? Elian asked. Better, Mavis replied. We can get the Empress out. The extraction operation unfolded under cover of a ceremonial light festival, when the palace security systems were temporarily recalibrated to accommodate the unusual energy patterns. A small team infiltrated through ancient tunnels beneath the crystal gardens, where Elian and Lyria had once shared their most intimate moments. When the hidden door to her chambers slid open, Lyria turned with the lethal grace of a cornered predator, a crystal dagger clutched in her hand. Upon seeing Elian, the weapon clattered to the floor. You came back, she whispered, disbelief warring with hope in her voice. I made a promise, he replied simply, extending his hand. Their reunion was tragically brief, a fierce embrace, a desperate kiss before reality reasserted itself. The countermeasure, Elian explained quickly. It will work, but we need access to the Keldorian command ship, which is currently in orbit above my capital, Lyria finished, her tactical mind immediately grasping the situation. I can provide that access, but not as a prisoner. I need to reclaim my throne first. What followed was not the desperate last stand of lovers against impossible odds, but the calculated alliance of 2 leaders who understood both their worlds and each other. Lyria activated a contingency plan long prepared, a coded signal that rallied her loyalists throughout the capital. Elian deployed Earth's technology to disrupt Keldorian communications. Together, They stormed the council chamber where Thaxon and the Keldorian ambassador were finalizing terms of Nexara's complete subjugation. "The true betrayal," Lyria announced as she entered, her voice ringing with authority that made even her enemies falter, "was not my heart's choice, but your willingness to sacrifice our world for personal power." The subsequent conflict was brief but intense. When it ended, Thaxon and his conspirators were in custody. The Keldorian ambassador was dead by his own guard's hand after the exposure of their true plans. And Lyria once again sat upon the crystal throne, though now with battle marks on her armor and Elian standing proudly at her side. "The Keldorian fleet still holds both our worlds hostage," she addressed the hastily assembled loyal council members. "But together, we have the means to end their threat permanently." The joint Earth-Nexaran operation that followed became legend, a desperate space battle where two seemingly incompatible technologies merged through the understanding of two people who had bridged their differences, created something new and devastating to their common enemy. Elian's countermeasure, amplified through Nexaran crystal matrices, cascaded through the Keldorian fleet, rendering their stolen weapons and shields useless. In the aftermath, as the diplomatic delegations from a dozen worlds gathered to witness the formal alliance between Earth and Nexara, rumors abounded about the nature of the relationship between the human ambassador and the Nexaran empress. Some said it was merely strategic. Others whispered of deeper connections. The truth was both simpler and more profound than any could guess. In the private garden where they had first acknowledged their feelings, Elian and Lyria met alone on the eve of the signing ceremony. "The council has accepted my reforms," she told him, her fingers intertwined with his. "No longer will our laws forbid personal unions between Nexarans and other species." "Convenient timing," Elian smiled, drawing her closer, "given what I'm about to propose." Their laughter mingled in the night air, rising toward the stars that had once seemed to separate their worlds but now connected them. A bridge built not just of treaties and technology, but of understanding, courage, and love that had defied every boundary placed before it. The next day, as representatives from both worlds signed the historic accord, few noticed the matching bands worn by the chief negotiators, simple circles containing elements of both Earth and Nexara, symbolizing that the greatest diplomacy begins with the recognition of shared hearts, no matter how different the bodies that house them might appear. And in the decades that followed, as the alliance flourished into a lasting peace that transformed both civilizations, historians would debate what had truly saved their worlds from destruction. Was it technology, strategy, political necessity? But those closest to the truth knew it began, with two people from different stars who dared to see possibility where others saw only difference, proving that the greatest power in the universe is not found in weapons or thrones, but in the courage to reach across the void and recognize oneself in the other.